never pick no.
That's right. Yep.
So?
Does anybody have any questions? Right down here.
Let's do it. I appreciate that.
So, how hard is it to actually get voiceover work?
Get voiceover work, like just in general? Well, I think that's going to vary with a lot of where you are and what your goals are. I grew up in New York, and I worked in New York as a voice actor and a director for close to 30 years. And I was one of, 100 guys that could do exactly what I could do. And I'd audition against 30 guys in a room. We all could do the same thing, and it was just a matter of like, well, today it's going to be Eric, and tomorrow it's going to be Mark, and things like that. So there's a lot of competition, and I was a successful person in New York, so it can be done. But you can also be a big fish in a small pond. And you're from here? See, the other thing too is like regionalisms and things like that. Like if you sound like you're from a certain area, then you're also limited to pretty much doing that kind of stuff unless that's what they're specifically looking for. So you need to also sound like you're from nowhere.
Non-regional diction.
Right?
Yeah.
But then again, some regional companies like to have someone that sounds like their next door neighbor. So I'm a voice actor here in Nashville, but I work remotely with a lot of clients from all over the country. But if you listen to local spots here, they all sound like, obviously it's like Bob Jones Chevrolet is being done by like Bob Jones, which he shouldn't be. But it sounds like a neighbor. So you can find work in radio stations, production companies here, but you have to work with someone that can at least get you, who can go with a coach who can teach you how to interpret copy, how to take directions, working on a demo reel. But it is acting. So in terms of how easy is it, just because you don't see us doesn't mean like it's anything less than what the on-camera stuff is doing. Or it's, if anything, we don't have the bonus of any physical performance. Exactly. So if I stop talking in a voiceover in a radio commercial, you change the channel. I don't have the luxury of a dramatic pause where I give you a look. I don't have that. I've got to do that in my read, and inflection, and timing. So it's tricky. It's different. But in terms of how easy it is, I'm not going to tell you not to do it. But I'm also going to tell you need to be better than I am to get the job.
Well, and we used to, be able to do a Walgreens radio commercial, but now Tina Fey is doing Walgreens radio commercials. So it's gotten very competitive. But we all started in New York, where you needed to be near a big city because there wasn't email and MP3, and now you can make your own home studio on a reasonable budget. And if you do your research right, and if you study and you're good, there is a way to live anywhere and do this job, fortunately and unfortunately for us.
But you have to ask yourself what your goal is. I mean, if you want that to be your job, then you need to make the investment, learn how to do it, study with someone, and pursue it. But you can be a big fish in a small pond. But also, I do think that a lot of people think, I've got a great voice, I should do voice acting. It's not that. It's really about being credible and being able to interpret copy. Because I do funny voices for a living, but I've made more money in my career as a voice actor talking like this about things that I don't know about. Honestly, that's really what it is. You can't wear the horns in the studio, though. You wouldn't be able to put your headphones on. Yeah. Good question.
Another question? Who's pointing?
Or comments. We'll take comments.
Who's asking for the check? Check, please.
So, how did you each get your start?
Oh, I was a kid. I was in a local Y singing competition. And luckily there was someone there who represented actors and said, do you want to go on some auditions? And I was like, okay. They said, do you want to go on this voiceover audition? And I said, what's that? And I went, and it was for wort cream, which is, I know it's a pretty luxurious business and fancy. And I had to say, ew, gross, a wart. And I got the job. hey, buddy. And I thought, oh, this is really cool. I can do this as a job. And obviously then I studied more, and I studied theater, and I was a singer, so I understood how to manipulate my voice and not lose my voice. And I worked in theater, I did a lot of different things, but this was sort of what I kept coming back to, was the voiceover stuff. And I love it. And I can work in my pajamas sometimes. Yeah. And that's fun. And no one knows.
Yeah. Well, I was a musician long before I was considered an actor, and I got an offer to work in a recording studio in New York right out of college, and I thought it was going to be a music studio. And I went in and I met with the boss, and she hired me and said, "This is great. You'll be our assistant. We got 2 rooms. Fantastic. This is great." I made coffee. It was a Karate Kid version of learning how to work in a studio, wax on, wax off. I cleaned the counters, I took the garbage out. And after a couple of weeks, I was like, so when did the band start coming in? Because everybody that was coming in was like in a suit, or some actors, and they'd always go into the main room. And they're like, oh, we really don't do a lot of music. We really do radio and TV voiceovers. That's about our main business. And I was like, okay. So I went from production assistant, which really means I took the garbage out, to assistant casting director, to casting director, and then I started directing the spots for clients. And then what would happen is, I'd have a casting session where I would have men and women come in to read for a radio spot. And you'd call in 10 people, 10 guys, 10 girls, and you'd pair them up and you'd read them. And what would always happen at every audition is, I'd get a call towards the end of the audition where one guy who was supposed to be coming in was busy. He has a doctor's appointment or he got a booking, he can't show up. And I have the woman waiting to read with someone, sitting in the waiting room by herself. And I would say, come on in, I'll read with you. And in radio, what you do is you slate, in a voiceover, you slate your name because they don't see you on camera. You say, this is like take 1, Eric Stuart as Guy. But I wouldn't slate because I was the producer, I was the casting director. But it would be the last couple on the casting tape. And the client started to say, we like number 3, Jane Smith, and we like the last guy, but he didn't say his name. And I'd say, well, that's just me, I was just filling in. Yeah, but we like you. And I said, all right. And at that time, because I was also directing and producing, I thought it was kind of double dipping. I didn't want to also take the jobs from the actors and be the guy that was giving the jobs. That was kind of not really cool. So at that specific time, I was offered the tour to go out with Ringo. And I thought to myself, okay, I can't have a day job and go on a rock tour, but I could be a voice actor and go on a rock tour, because anywhere there's a place that's quiet and I can find a microphone, I could probably do what I needed to do. So I had relationships with a lot of the agents because I've been working with them for 10 years, giving a lot of their clients work. So I put together a demo reel, and I went to one of the agents that I liked that was really small at the time. And I said, would you like to represent me? And they said yes. And they signed me, and that's where I started working with Innovative, and Innovative then became like the big monster voice actor, like agent of the world. And now there's like 30 guys on the roster that do exactly what I do. So I sort of used voice acting as a way to supplement my music career, because that's my job. I'm a voice actor, I'm a director, that's what pays the bills, and then I play music because it's my passion. So it gave me the balance of the opportunity. So that wasn't my goal, but I love doing it, and I take it very seriously. And I teach it, and I direct, and it's definitely a big part of my life. But if I had to give up one of the 2 things, it would probably be voice acting over music, because that's who I am. So that's how I fell into it.
Funny enough, I had, it was a Nickelodeon pilot that I did with Jessica DeChico, who's a huge anime, and is she in Foxborough? Is she British? Adventure Time. Adventure Time, that's right. And we did a panel not too long ago together and reflected on it. So it was these 2 belly buttons. They shot these girls' belly buttons, and like a belly dancer, they would move their bellies, and they had eyes, fake eyes, and a mouth. It would be, I think the mouth was the belly button, and one was named Innie, and one was named Outie. And oddly enough, they wanted me to sound raspy, and Jessica not to. But Jessica was very raspy. And I was only
like this all the time. Her whole voice is like this.
Yeah, she does little boy voices great. But yeah, so anyway, and that was my first foray into it, and it was very confusing, and then I didn't do it for a long, long time.
although I've done a lot of theater, which obviously encourages you to use your voice and whatnot. And so, yeah, KP came up through, KP really was my big break into it, just because I was on a show called Even Stevens, and Disney was like, let's hear what you have to sound like, and I said, well, of course. And Allison Hannigan was the one they had in mind, because she has red hair and a great eyes and kind of looked the part. Disney does this thing where they kind of cast people like that kind of look like the princess, and it's kind of funny. So Allison's great, but I think what my voice provided, just as a product, you kind of have to try to look at yourself as a product. Like he was saying, what he does is a product, and some other people have something similar, but it's not him, you know? For me, I had sort of this more teenage sarcasm that they wanted Kim Possible to have, and I think they really, really liked that. So, you know, it was just a fit. It was just the right place, right time scenario. And then from there, I ended up, you know, doing Yuffie and Final Fantasy, and just a myriad of other stuff, and also do audiobooks now as well, which is a really good way if you're not doing animation. I feel like to kind of keep your vocal chops up. It's a really great way.
And your voice.
Yeah.
It tests your voice.
And it fills in the blanks between the other jobs, because an audiobook takes a lot of time. So if you're working on things that are like every couple of weeks, the audiobook is like, oh, I could do this every day or every other day. So it helps pay the bills in between those things.
Next question for each of you again. Two-part question. First, which is your favorite voice you've done? And second, what is one voice that you wish you could do, like had a chance to, like a voice that's in the back of your head?
Who wants to take that first? Anybody have an answer?
Mine would be Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. I wish I could do it.
That's pretty good. I mean, I guess I'd have to go with Bart Simpson.
Because I could kind of get.
You know what I mean? Like, if I can't match her perfectly, but oh my gosh, what a fun role to do. Like, that would be a dream role.
So you're answering them in reverse order.
I'm answering in reverse order. It's like the reverse. So, and my favorite role to do, I think my favorite role was in a show called Generator Rex that was on Cartoon Network for about 2 seasons. And it was the guys who do Ben 10 did that show. So the animation was really cool. And I got to, every time I showed up, I played Cersei, who was kind of this tough chick. And every time I went to a session, there was a cooler cast than the time before. Like Mark Hamill was standing next to me at one session and got me in trouble. It's just a funny story I'll tell it, because basically we had to be really quiet in between our lines, and he had something he was reading, because we're not working all the time, and he was kind of reading a paper, and they kept saying, Tara, you're moving your papers during your lines, and I didn't want to tell on Luke Skywalker. So I didn't know what to do. I just kept saying, oh, okay, I'll be more careful. And I'm like trying to look over, and I'm like, Mark Hamill, you're making it better. And like, you know, he doesn't have trouble getting work. I want to look professional. So I love working on that show, just because I would show up and like one day J.K. Simmons was there. One day John DiMaggio, who you guys know is like Bender from Futurama.
John DiMaggio.
And he it was the most great alive, just the most intimidating room you've ever been in, and Daryl Sparrow was the lead on that show, and just I would just literally be in awe of who I was working with every time I got to work. So I think that was my favorite role, and it was written well. It was a cool character. So those are my reverse answers.
Okay, so choosing my favorite is always hard, because the fans always ask me that question, and I feel like I'm picking my favorite child. I would have to say that my favorite character to voice in the humor side, because that's going to be my safe answer, is James from Team Rocket, because I like the fact that we borrow from the masters. I mean, there's nothing really new, all right? So I do hybrids when I do my characters, and Edwin and Fraser Crane are kind of my, I always thought that James should be related to Niles and Fraser, and that he was just the third Crane brother.
Maybe he is going Ancestry.
But then the laugh with the, ooh, yes, Mr. Flintstone, is what I was doing. And I like playing a funny bad guy, because they're bad disguises that we as the viewers always saw through, but of course you know, Ash and Brock and Misty they weren't like, hey, I think I know these guys. There's nothing funnier than bad impersonations done by silly villains. So that was great, but the voice I wish I could have played, though, I think that Kevin Conroy is, of course, the king of it, is, of course, this one. But I always thought I could have done the Christian Bale Batman, and not the second version, which the swear to me stuff, but that's what I always wanted to play, was Batman in anything. I have a black Mustang, which I call the Batmobile, which has Batman floor mats and a cowl in the back window. I wear Batman socks, and every once in a while I wear my shirt, but that's the character that I always wanted to play, that kind of villain. So the closest I ever got to do that, I think, would be Seto Kaiba. I think to me, Seto Kaiba is like Bruce Wayne. So there you go. I got close.
I think when I did, we also can do these things called voice matches. Have you guys done some of that? I'm sure you have.
Hard to do.
I got to do Angelina Jolie's voice match for Kung Fu Panda video game. And that was really awesome because she's like my favorite actress of all time. So that was just a huge highlight for me. And I've always wanted to be an actual Disney princess, but I think what I really like to do is do sort of like what Jessica does. I've never really mastered the little boy voice. That's like, I bet you could do it. I'm sure, I've done it. I have it on my reel, but I don't know if I can make money doing it, you know?
Well, the trouble with certain voices, and this leads into something I think we talked about the last panel, is sometimes we establish a voice and then we realize we can't do it for hours at a time.
Right.
So you got to be careful what you audition with, because then you get in there and after 20 minutes you can't talk anymore.
Like, you ever audition with a cold and then you book it?
Yeah, yeah.
And then you're like, shoot.
And then you go to a preschool so you can catch that cold again.
Yep.
Just to get that job.
Pretty much.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. If anybody ever saw that crazy show Dinosaur King, I was Dr. Z on that, and that was a role that I auditioned for with a crazy, painful voice. And I asked them how much he spoke when they booked me. I said, if we're going to do this character, how much in the show does he speak? And they said, oh, just a little bit. He sort of sets up their mission and then wraps it up at the end. I said, great. No, he screamed and yelled like, 20% of the show every episode. So as they booked me more and more for that show, I would say, I can only do 2 hours of ADR for this. I can't do 4 hours a day, because then I won't be able to do anything else that I'm doing. So that was a dumb voice to choose. Speaking of Shaggy, though, Brock is Casey Kasem, because the first anime I ever watched was Battle of the Planets, which, if you've ever seen old school stuff, G-Force. And when I was in 5th grade, I could talk like Casey Kasem, because I had the same voice I have now. And so he was, right? So he was my first anime voiceover actor star, and, he played Shaggy as well. So Brock is somewhere between, a lighter version of Casey Kasem and a less stoned version of Shaggy.
Do girls like that in 5th grade, or is that creepy?
No, the girls liked the fact that I would play guitar on our red carpet stairs that were in the lobby of our school. I would just sing songs all day long, because I went to a private school, so we really didn't have class. And that's actually, one radio station once said to me, so tell me, why did you start playing music? And I said, to meet girls. And they were like, finally, one of you guys actually admits that.
He's just like Brock. You're just like Brock.
I'm just like Brock.
Yeah,
I have a question. You have a question?
Yeah, back here.
This is the shortest standalone.
The difference between playing Miss Stevens and Kim Possible, which did you like better and why?
I guess it comes back to that idea of, on camera versus, wearing your pajamas, or being able to sort of wear your pajamas to go to work, which I've grown increasingly fond of. But I don't know, I think both of those characters are really great, strong female characters, so I was really proud to sort of play both of them. And people used to ask me, do you think that they might be friends? And I actually do. I think that they would be friends if they had met, if the two characters would meet. So they're similar, but different enough where I wasn't bored. If I was just going in and doing the same character that I was doing on camera at the same time, it would have been sort of like, okay, now I feel like I can't even be creative and sort of grow. But Kim was definitely a departure from that character. Even just the style of the show, like the comedy. Even Stevens with Shia was obviously very big comedy. Not as big as some of the other shows that Disney now has, but I think Kim Possible had a really great ability to capture like your parents' attention, and they could like watch it with you. And you know, I've had so many parents tell me, well, you know, the kids leave the room and we finish it anyway, because the humor was just sort of, you know, just really well done. So yeah, it was a real honor to play both those characters. Good question, thank you.
That time. Two. You got a question too?
I have a question for Christy. My question was, how did it turn out to where you're doing the voice of Kim Possible as well as doing the opening theme?
As well as doing Yuffie?
No, as well as doing the opening theme.
I didn't hear that. Oh, I did not do that. Christina Milian does the opening theme. And then I did do, however, a song on one of the movies, or one of the, maybe one of the movies, and then one in one of the episodes where she had like a secret talent, and so it was to sing. And they were really sweet about that. Just to do something different, I think, is what they really wanted to do. Same thing with even Stevens. We ended up doing a musical episode way before they did High School Musical, and Disney realized that it's actually one of their big highlights of their history, the Disney Channel history, because when that tested through the roof, they decided to start doing the franchises with music. So that sort of is a little side. Total, yeah, tangent.
Question over here.
My question for Christy. Whenever you got cast as Kid Possible, did you feel like he was going to be a big hit like it was?
I know it was going to be as popular as it was. I'm sure some of the other people up here can relate to, like, when you're pulled in to a room and they're like, listen, firstly, you can't talk about this. You have to sign something called a non-disclosure agreement, or you have to at least, you don't, in order to not lose your job, you're like, well, I agree not to say anything. Or your agents may tell you this as well, but you know, it's also great because when we get these auditions, sometimes we'll get the pictures of the characters, and just based sometimes based on what they look like, you can look at it long enough. I mean, he's been directing and casting. You start to get the eye for what a good show looks like and what may have more of a brand and a market in you know, the world, right? So some of the things you see are sketched out really crazy, like the not Comedy Central ones, but the Cartoon Network ones, and some of the more modern ones that you can't really tell based on the animation. But for me, with Kim Possible, I could see how different she was from even like DuckTales and, you know, other things. So I knew that it was something new that hadn't been done before, and that, you know, it was Walt Disney Studios, and they were collaborating with the channel, so it was something that hadn't been done before. So I kind of knew, and they also kind of told me, this is going to be big. So,
which is what they say in every show we've ever had. I mean,
I know.
I can't tell you how many times people have said to me, this is going to be bigger than Pokemon. Every animation show every show I've ever worked on. And even when we auditioned for Pokemon, we were all like, oh yeah, this is going to be bigger than whatever. And like, yeah, sure it is. You never know. But yeah, what Chris said about the recognizing what looks like it's going to be successful marketing-wise, the amount of meetings I've had in terms of, because we did both ADR and with, you know, existing dubbing, and then with prelay original animation. And anytime we'd have these meetings where they would introduce characters and concepts, it was always like the argument of stop reinventing the wheel. There's a formula that works with children's television. It's worked for years. We need to be able to relate to a character in that group. Not all of them, but there needs to be something that we can connect to. And when you make all the characters ones that you don't like, you lose the audience. Or you start trying to change the storyline so that it's much more complicated than it needs to be, then you lose the audience. And I mean, I'm a fan of actually of Kim Possible. I watch that show. I mean, and the thing for me is the humor, the intelligent humor, the sarcasm, all of that stuff is I relate to it. So it's a clever show. And yes, it also relates to the younger audience, but it entertains an older audience because it's smart. But there's also characters that you relate to, that you like. that make you laugh, or they're cool, whatever. We worked on so many shows where they would try to change that, and they would always fail. So yes, when you're presented with this stuff, you kind of look and go, this has the potential. It's not necessarily about every voice actor that's cast. You're already starting with a very smart formula. Even if there's a lot of money put in it. I've worked on shows where they've invested millions of dollars that have tanked. They have tanked because the storyline was never there. Right? How many times have you seen Romeo and Juliet? And I'm not talking about Romeo and Juliet, but the storyline used in different formats. It's as old as time. It always works. Right? Don't reinvent the wheel.
You got time for one last question?
Would you guys hold your voice during acting?
How long can we hold her? Can we keep the same voice, like do like a session?
Yeah.
Well, it really depends on how painful that voice is to do. I mean, I could probably talk like Brock for an entire day and it would annoy you. I do like to put on some voices when I'm out in public, just like, you know, if I'm ordering in the restaurant, I might do like, you know.
You're that guy?
Yeah, because like, I have kids. I have 2 daughters, so one of them always asks me to talk like Peggy Pudgeon from Viva Pinata, because we're from Brooklyn, and down here, that's kind of like a foreign language, right? So a lot of times I'm talking like this, and I'm like, I'm ordering something, can I get that, can I get this, and that, the other thing? But the other thing is I can't stop talking like that, because then I ruin the whole mood of the thing, and I don't want the waitress to know that I've been fooling her. So the whole time I'm talking like this, which everyone else in the family is like, could you please stop? But you know, when my one daughter wants that, I have to do it.
And it depends if we're, you know, you probably play video games, right? Yeah, and you hear a lot of like, oh, ow, and like a lot of getting. So if we're doing a game like that, they make sure that we don't work for too long, because we can lose our voices very quickly. But if I'm doing a character where I just sound like this and I'm very happy, I could go all day long, and then I am sick of my own voice.
Good question.
That is a good question.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time we have. Put your hands together, please. Christy Romano, Eric, Stuart, Terry Sands. Stop by their table, talk to them, get some autographs, ask some questions, get them to do your favorite voices.
Toothpaste, flannel for my face, pajamas.